nice to see you all today. Thank you so much for joining us for this fourth webinar in the TaRL Africa webinar series. We have had an interesting set of webinars so far. We talked about the impact and spread of teaching at the right level in sub-Saharan Africa. We talked about supporting teachers. We had a very nice session on using assessment data to inform action. And today we're going to be talking about innovations to strengthen teaching at the right level in the classroom. For those of you who are not familiar with teaching at the right level, you're most welcome to go to our website, teachingattheright.level.org, and familiarize yourself with the approach. Today we will work with the assumption that you are all already familiar with teaching at the right level, and we aim to provide insights into some methodologies, challenges, and implementations, innovations that have been focused on to improve learning outcomes in teaching at the right level programming. We have a very interesting lineup of speakers today and topics. So thank you once again for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the session. Reminder that please use the chat box to introduce yourself, but please add all questions only in the Q&A box. Take a minute to identify the Q&A box so that you know where it is. And as you're hearing panelists speak, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box. If you have some reflections that you would just like to share with everyone, please feel free to add those in the chat box as well. My name is Devyani. I'm the Technical Advisor at Teaching at the Right Level Africa, and I will be your host today. So let's get started. Our first speaker for today is Meera Tendolkar. Meera is the Director of Math Content and Training with Pratham International and has been part of the Teaching at the Right Level Africa initiative right from the start. Meera leads numeracy instruction design, training, and research at Pratham International and has been supporting this work at Teaching at the Right Level Africa. She has great experience of working with governments and partner organizations to adapt and implement Teaching at the Right Level programs across sub-Saharan Africa, and also reviewing programs and strengthening programs. So we're very excited to have Meera with us today. Welcome, Meera. Meera is going to be introducing learning labs to us. And she'll be talking about what we have been doing at Teaching at the Right Level Africa to implement learning labs. So over to you, Meera, and we'll come back to the mentee later. Over to you, Meera.
Yeah. Thank you, Devyani, and good morning, good evening, all of you. And I'm very much happy I have got a chance to share my experience and talk about what innovations we are doing. Let me share my screen. Okay. Yeah. So today, I got an opportunity. I'm very happy for that to share my overviews about the learning lab, which we have created in TaRL Africa for last many years. We have started working on implementing TaRL in different sub-Saharan countries, and we are getting wonderful feedback for that. For implementing TaRL. There are certain things what we realize that we need to again check and experiment to strengthen more and more and to see how can we improve more children's learning level. Okay, so I'm going to talk about on the outline of this, what is the background of learning lab, what is actually introduction about the learning lab, and what are the models we are using to work on this to strengthen the children's learning level. So as you know that we are working in more than 10 sub-Saharan countries, and out of these 3 countries where we call it the core countries, we have a partnership directly with government, and as I said, in Zambia, in Cote d'Ivoire, the government has taken the initiative, and I will say they have taken the ownership of TaRL to implement across country. In Nigeria, there are several states are coming forward to do a partnership and to work with them. Rest of the countries where there are many local NGOs are taking interest and they are implementing TaRL in their countries. So you can see the spread is going across Africa, and more countries are joining, and they are finding TaRL is one of the promising solution to improve children's reading and math skills. We are getting wonderful results. Children's learning levels are improving. Everyone is talking about it. But still, there are some of the children who are still remain on the lower level, like a 20 to 25%, or sometimes 30% children by the end of the program remain on the same level. This is one of the concern. And what we thought that it is, we need to have something in our hand to how can we reduce that proportion of non-readers, and can it be possible to increase the portion of children who can read fluently? This is the data of 3 different countries. You can see the Borno. We started first in one of the state of Nigeria, which is a volatile state, but there we got a wonderful response. But still, there are some children who are not improving, and how can we work on it? How can we increase number of children on the higher level? This is one of the concern we have. And to strengthen the TaRL approach, we got various experience, like what we all have gone through the pandemic situation. Many children schools remain closed. That was the one of the setback where children lagging behind a lot in that situation. Extended that schools remain closure, and due to the technological problem, some of the challenges also the schools were facing. And for that, how what kind of a approach which is flexible in that context, to understand, to work on it, these are the things we actually working on it. And TaRL Africa's learning agenda recommend that learning from ongoing program and improving learning outcome in different contexts. So what are the solution we should find it out to make it more and more children go on the higher level of the competencies of reading and math. So, by the way, reading in TaRL, we say that the children should be able to read fluently with the comprehension, and in math, we expect that children should do at least 3 digit by 1 digit division, or 2 digit by 1 digit division. Okay. I will talk about the models what we are implementing now. So there are 2 models we have designed, and the first model, which we call progressive model, and after my presentation, Vikas will talk more about it. So this model is about children need to encourage children to sit in a group and learn. What we observe that when children get opportunity to sit in a small group with their friends, actual peer learning happen, their confidence increase, and this is not a natural process. If you ask children to go and sit in a group, they will not sit, because they don't have that habit. As a teacher, need to inculcate that habit among children to sit in a small group, work with each other, give them some small and simple tasks they can achieve, and they will find it confident. Many of the children are not able to speak in front of a whole class. They get opportunity to sit in a small group and do practice. Another thing is, as my data was showing you, that still some of the children remain on the lower level. Can it be possible to focus on that, where we can say that majority of children we have shifted from that lower level to higher level, so they can achieve something bigger. So this is where can it be possible to make it phase wise planning. So we have combined all the grouping, the small group activities, and the phase wise model in this progressive. And the second model, where our existing TaRL program, how can it be possible to get more support through community? We know that the parents in these communities are literate or semi-literate, and they are very much rely on school, that my child is going in school and the teacher's responsibility to teach them, and that is one side is not wrong, because they will not be able to teach them. So in this model, we are trying to encourage children to do some simple activities at home. Make your own group, be your group leader, and some of the activities which are fun activities or games for reading, reading, or some stories about the math, and they can do at home. This is another thing, is that inculcating habit of sitting at home instead of just saying that go and do homework, but something which they can enjoy, they find it interesting, and they can sit together and work there. So at that point, what are the things will happen, like, can parents will find out, oh, something is happening, my child is sitting with some other children and not actually just playing, but they are doing some meaningful activities. These are the activities which are not very difficult, but I as a parent can also support them, at least by providing some place, saying that which is the environment safe, a place where I can provide to the children who are sitting from the neighborhood community. So this is one of the model we have created, which will strengthen our existing TAL program. Okay. Now, these are the models which we are implementing in these three countries. Kenya, where we have we are working in 5 schools where uh, the program called language learning from familiar to formal, L to F2, where from local language, how can children will learn English in Kenya? This program is going on along with the numeracy, and from this year we have started experimentation of grade 1 and 2, which is again we are in the process of learning by ourselves. How can we create that model contextual for the African scenario? What are the things can be possible to give to the children? So this is the something which is happening in Kenya Learning Lab, and in Cote d'Ivoire, the progressive model, which Vikas is going to talk about it, and neighborhood group model, which is very, very important in Cote d'Ivoire, where coaches are involved. Coaches are the school management committee, which is taking keen interest to implement neighborhood model, where the messages to the community are given through coaches. The coaches, the community members are there. Parents are also the member of a school management committee. So they are coming forward. The government master trainers have conducted their training and workshop to orient parents what exactly we are talking about, what is the neighborhood model, what are we expected from them, and they got wonderful feedback from them. So this is the coaches model of neighborhood group we are doing in Cote d'Ivoire. Nigeria is again another scenario where what we found that teachers actually are struggling in teaching higher competencies of TAL. When I'm talking higher competencies of TAL, reading and writing in local language, which is Hausa, and in mathematics, teacher doesn't have a confidence of teaching multiplication and division of grade 3, 4, 5 level. So here we have, last year we have introduced them a short course in 5 schools with 35 to 40 teachers, and we took them in confidence by telling them that this is not the we are here to say that you don't know anything, but we in a collaborative manner need to understand what are the best things we can do to the children. And as a teacher, we can also learn, we can also think about that, okay, these are the things we can't do, I can't do, I should learn. And we have created a simple activities and practice worksheet for the children, for teachers, and share with them. And we got wonderful response from them. They said that this is something really helpful for us, because we were actually struggling, and what they were doing, they were just conducting the activities which they are more comfortable with that. So children are actually not making progress because teacher were not teaching them in the class. So this is what we did last year. This year, the in KB, the state where we are doing this program, government decided that we will spread from our side that out of from this 5 school, each school will take another 5 school, and they will convey this message to those teachers. They will train those teachers, and this is how it is spreading. Now, also we have decided that if this is going to work, but the running course might be difficult, but can it be possible to integrate this model, this short course, or whatever we will call it, in our TAL training? So teacher will get simultaneously a capacity building sessions for themselves to understand how to solve multiplication and division, as well as how to teach children. So this is for Nigeria we are doing. Okay, I will stop here, and if anyone has any question, I can. I'm happy to answer that question. Yeah, I will stop my screen. Thank you. Thank you
Yes,
so much.
thank you. Thank you so much, Mira, for that. That was very interesting, and I hope people were able to grasp the various innovations that we have been trying and experiments that we have been going through in the learning labs. Thank you very much for that overview. If you have questions for Mira, please do add them to the chat. I see there's already one from Nicholas. You can see, Mira, if you would like to answer that question or you would like somebody else to. So I'm now going to move on to our next presentation. And remember, if you have questions for Mira, please do add them in the Q&A box. Before we go to our next speaker, I'd like to introduce you to Menti so that we can have your reflections as we go along the webinar. So for those of you who are familiar with Menti, please go to menti.com and enter the code that you see in the chat, that 5489643. So go to menti.com and enter 5489643. For those of you who find that a bit challenging, please click the link that I have put in the chat. Both approaches are absolutely fine. The link and the code are both in the chat. So request you all to please log on to Menti, and I'm going to ask Tanvi to take us through a couple of questions.
All right. Hopefully you'll be able to see my screen soon.
Great. So where are you joining us from? Kenya, South Africa. I know it's been challenging in Kenya, at least in Nairobi, with the power cuts. So thank you so much for finding a way to join us today. It's great to see that so many of you are here from Kenya, despite the connectivity challenges. South Africa, Lugari village. Unfortunately, I don't know where that is. So do tell us which country you're joining from. That would be great to know where Lugari is. We have folks from Cote d'Ivoire, Washington, Harare, very nice. Zambia, I see that in the chat. Botswana, Boston, fantastic. So we have quite a spread of folks, more folks from Kenya, that's great. Morocco, yes, we saw Morocco as well. Try to log on to the Menti, it's menti.com. Use the code 5489643. And for those of you who prefer to click a link, the link is in the chat. I will paste the message again so that you can click the link. Okay, so move on to the next question. So what strategies or practices do you use in your classrooms to improve teaching and learning experiences? Can you share with us today? We talked a little bit about what are some of the things that we have been trying to do to improve teaching and learning experiences in the classroom. I see some people are still responding to the first question. Let's try to answer this question. What strategies or practices do you use in your classrooms to improve teaching and learning experiences? Would somebody like to share with us one sentence, a couple of sentences, just so that we get a flavor of what some of you are doing? We have someone from Somalia as well. Carousel learning. That's interesting. You can share more about that in the chat if you would like to. Small group learning with play. Yep, exciting. That's something that we use in TaRL as well. Peer learning among teachers. Yes, very important. Competition amongst the groups to check if they grasp context. Yeah, children love games. Children love challenges. So I'm sure that works very well. Small group and individual exercises. Trying to ensure inclusive teaching where no child is left behind. Yeah, very important. Empowering group leaders as junior teachers. Teasing questions. Co-teaching with Playway. Very exciting. Yep. Instructional coaching and student feedback, debating. Yeah, that's very exciting. If any of you would like to share a bit more about some of these strategies in the chat, feel free to do so. I think people would love to hear more from our experiences. We have a rich group that has joined us today. Humor and joking puzzles. Yeah, I'm sure children love that. Great. Yeah, so you're already seeing here so many different innovations, approaches, strategies that we are using in the classroom to improve teaching and learning experiences. I think we have a great group here. So very, very good to see your experiences. You can continue to share more in the chat. So moving on, thank you so much, Tanvi. I'll move to our next speaker for today. Our next speaker for today is Vikas Verma. Welcome, Vikas. Vikas is a content developer and trainer at Pratham International, and he's also been working with the Teaching at the Right Level Africa initiative right from inception. He's been a key support for math capacity building of government master trainers and teachers, especially in catch-up in Zambia. He's also been working on program review implementation across a number of countries and partners across sub-Saharan Africa. So welcome, Vikas. Thank you for joining us today. Vikas is going to be talking to us about one of the innovations that Mira mentioned in the learning labs, which is the progressive model in Cote d'Ivoire. So over to you, Vikas.
Thanks, Devyani. Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. My name is Vikas. I'm from India, currently in Cairo. So hello from Cairo, Egypt. Let me share my screen. So as my colleague Mira has already mentioned why we have started the learning lab. So we all know that one of the challenges which we are facing after implementing the program for last 4 years or 3 years, we started seeing that the improvement was very minimal towards the lower level. And if we see the improvement towards the higher level also was very minimal. So along with that, there was other challenges which we are facing, that if there is a large classroom are there, that teachers always find difficult. The difficulty were in different form. First is like we expect that teachers, when they conduct the classes, they should go from whole class where they build the concept, then they go to the small group for a peer learning practice purposes. Most of you have shared that strategy also. It was very challenging in the higher classroom, large classrooms. Along with that, the challenges we have faced with the teachers is the boundness of the teaching and teaching time. They have curriculum, they have other activities, so they cannot give proper timing also to improve their capacity to teach the TaRL methodology. Along with that, they have the problem with the pedagogical overload. When I say pedagogical overload, most of you will relate that in some time in countries there are multiple programs are running, or in the education system there are multiple programs. The same teachers are doing uh, program A, program B, and they are trying to implement with the same grade. So sometimes they have overload of content. And as Mira has already mentioned about this improvement, lower improvement towards lower level and lower improvement towards higher level, which is a challenging part for us. So these gave us idea to find out a solution which comes in form of progressive model. So what is progressive model? So when we say progressive model, it's a phase-wise approach where we'll focus all skill. However, we have to make sure that we will develop first skill in a phase-wise manner. So we have to develop something in the phase one along with focusing on the other learners also, and then we'll move to the next set of skill in the next phase. So if we compare with our regular TaRL model, so in regular TaRL, if we are doing 6-month program, for example, so how the TaRL models look like? So we are doing a baseline, midline, endline, which is our assessment cycle, and where we are saying if you are doing phase-wise model, we are trying to divide our phases in two parts. So the first phase will be the 3-month, and the second phase will be 3-month. So once we have done the assessment, we always say we have to do the grouping as per their level. So what's the difference between TaRL and progressive model? So when we are doing the grouping in our regular TaRL, as per the learning's level or as per the context, either teacher can do a heterogeneous grouping where they can mix all the learner as per their level, and one teacher can be allocated for that group. Or either there is an option that in a literacy maybe beginner or later level, which is the level where children don't have reading ability of words and paragraph, they can uh, be in one group, and that can be handled by one teacher. So that was very flexible, where we are saying that you should do either heterogeneous or homogeneous as per your context, as per your number of learners. However, we started in progressive model that we will always start with the heterogeneous grouping, where we mix all the learner in one class and either grade wise, and we will try to teach with them in a phase-wise manner. We will try to focus there in a phase-wise manner. In the next phase, as per context, we will move. So whether we are, if you are doing heterogeneous in the context, so we'll go to the heterogeneous. If you are doing homogeneous, we'll go in homogeneous classes in the second phase. So how the phase-wise, how the content in phase-wise look like? So when we talk about normal TaRL, in normal TaRL, after assessment, we group the learner. As per their learning levels, teachers start preparing the lesson plans. They start giving them instruction based on the level. Where in phase-wise manner, we said there will be focus on non-readers plus light activities with the reader, because we cannot deny that there will be in the class some non-readers and some reader learner also. So we have to cater everyone. So in literacy, we said we will focus on beginner, later, and word level children, along with the some lighter activity for a reader level, which is paragraph and story. And we decided, as you have already mentioned, we decided we'll go with the grade-wise grouping. So within grade, we'll do the grouping, and we'll try to make sure that all the non-readers should at least reach to the word level in 3 months. Similarly, in mathematics, we decided that uh, what we have seen, that operation data is not improving. We were seeing the results in number addition, but the operation like division was still not improved. So we thought, what could be the problem? So we decided that in this phase-wise manner, we can think of, or we can focus on pre-operational skills, like we can build their concept of numbers, knowledge, place value, and along with that, we can think of mental maths. Uh, and in this phase, when we are building the concept, we should using the small number, like we can say like 1 to 20 number. We try to build the concept of number knowledge as well as all operation, including addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. So once we'll achieve this in phase one, teacher will progress to the phase two, and learner will also go there, where our focus will shift to all reading skills for all learners on the reading skill, where we'll more focus that our word level learner should move to the reading fluence reading level by giving them simple activities of reading practice and as well as story practice. Uh, and then similarly in maths, we will try to, once they grasp the concept of mathematics, we will try to move how to solve that operation, and we can use up to 100 number. That was our strategy in phase 2. So what's the teacher's role in this? So teacher's role were very clear that when they will train, when they will receive the training, they will get the training for how to teach the both reader and non-reader in their class, uh, and how they can focus on non-reader and how they should reach them on word recognition level. And along with that, they should enhance the peer learning also. What additional strategy we thought about in this model? We thought about that if it is possible, we can try that training will be in phase-wise manner. So if suppose we talk about this overload, content overload. So we thought like if we want that this model, so maybe the phase 1 content can be delivered in first training, and then second training we can train them for the second round of training. And along with that, we have given them strategy, how to handle the whole class, small group, individual level. And as we talk about these challenges that teacher often find difficult to handle the large classes or in large classrooms. So we specifically tried some strategies towards uh, how to work within small groups and how to utilize the leader students. So we come up with some strategy and which we used in 1 or 2 years, and then we incorporated into this progressive model. And now what we have learned from this. So when we started this learning lab, we started with a very small scale, like 5 school um, model in Zambia, in Nigeria, in Cote d'Ivoire. So far in Cote d'Ivoire, we progress a lot. We continuously learning from Cote d'Ivoire. Uh, and when last year when we did this program in Cote d'Ivoire, what we have seen that if we compare the result from our UP model, which is a national scale program in Cote d'Ivoire, happening with the support of Ministry of Education of Cote d'Ivoire, we try to compare, though the scale was very small, like this year we have tried this progressive model in 10 school. We try to compare our national scale program. We saw little improvement, but we thought uh, it cannot be fair because amount of scale which we have in our regular national program is little higher. So we thought this could be, we need to see. So you can see the results here. So if you see in tech, from beginner to later, there is a drop of 37% at lower level, wherein our progressive model, that drop was 51%, which we have seen, which is good. Like, but again, you'll see in our national program of Cote d'Ivoire that our progressive model result is not showing result at higher level, but our regular program is showing higher that results. So similarly, in numeracy, what we have seen at lower level, there was not much change. But what we have seen the operation when we did the progressive model, where we focus in phase 1 on pre-operational skills, we saw there is a, at least amount of change of 5% in compared to the national result. So we thought about maybe we can give another try. So we did something before. So before jumping there, we did some qualitative study also. We did some focus group discussion. And what we have learned that this model was totally bind by the teachers. Teachers were very happy because for them it was easy to implement this program because when they have the teaching at the right level entire package with them, so they found little difficult in terms of session planning, but this phase-wise manner, it helped them to do the session planning well. In our study, we found like almost 80% teachers were able to do the session planning perfectly. They were still struggling with the transition of small group to individual. And in this program, they we have clearly learned that consistent mentoring was a good support for a for the manage the different classroom in phase 2 also. So what next? So as I mentioned that when we have compared this program with our national program, we thought about that this cannot be actually comparison. So maybe we need to do a small study. So we decided this study, which we started this year. Currently, we have closed this program. Of course, it's end now, and now we are doing the analysis. This is currently in the analysis phase. So we decided that let's check the effectiveness of this progressive model in a comparison manner. So we are currently doing a A/B testing in 120 schools. So where we have trained 63 school teacher on progressive model, and we selected some random 63 schools which they are doing TaRL model. So there is a basically comparison between 63 schools with progressive model, 63 schools without progressive model, or they are doing regular TaRL. And this was done again in Cote d'Ivoire, as we are already doing the progressive model from last 3 years in Cote d'Ivoire, and we are learning a lot. So we decided to do here, and we started this program in January. Currently, this program is closed. We have done the endline. Currently, the data is in analysis phase, and we are doing the FZDs with the teachers. So hopefully, we can share the results on that also, what we have learned from this study also. That's it from my side. Thank you so much. If you have any question, please feel free to ask.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vikas, for that presentation. If people have questions for Vikas, please do add them in the Q&A box. Vikas, there's one question in the Q&A box. Would you like to take this live? The question is,
Yes.
what strategies can teachers use to facilitate lesson differentiation and effectively manage learners at different levels? So I think this is more broadly on teaching at the right level. And the use of homogeneous and heterogeneous approaches is sometimes tricky. Maybe you want to take a minute also to explain what homogeneous and heterogeneous is before you answer this question.
Yeah, thanks, Devyani. So when we say homogeneous, so let's take example. If we are doing the program in grade 3, 4, and 5, and we have 3 teachers from grade 3, 4, and 5. So once we have done the assessment, so we have students from grade 3, 4, and 5. So what we'll do, we have different levels. Like in literacy, we have beginner, later, word, and para, and story. So there is two options. One, the grade 3 teacher can mix the grade 3 teacher can do the grouping of beginner, later, and word and parent story together in within their grade. So that will call it mixed group or heterogeneous grouping. Whereas we have another option. All grade 3, 4 learner who are at beginner and later level can be handled by one teacher, which we give them name as homogeneous grouping. And both the groups have there is pros and cons in terms of handling. Yeah. Devyani, could you help me to repeat the question again? What happened? Sorry.
Yeah. So the question was, what strategies can teachers use to facilitate lesson differentiation and effectively manage learners at different levels? So maybe you want to give some examples of how we do this in teaching at the right level.
Yeah, thanks. So one thing is that once you understand the methodology, we need to understand how we do the lesson planning. And in our case, we always say our lesson planning is very flexible. If you are handling the lower level, so you need to understand what's the challenge with them. So you have to define your clear goal, that how you have to design the lesson. So once you design the lesson, so suppose, for example, if I have to build a house, what are the things I need? So you'll make a list of things that I need this and this, and this all these things will be in the sequence. So if you suppose, for example, if you want to build a house, you need a tent also, you need a furniture also, but that will be required little later. So similarly in TaRL also, we have different activities. And as per level, we can use those activities. So once you decide the goal that my learner should read the paragraph in next 10 days or 20 days. So which activity I should need? And according to that, I'll choose those activities and I'll plan that and I'll deliver that. And whenever we are doing this activity, we always train the teachers and we always talk about that give some more time in whole class first. When you're giving whole class, was it always take time to build the concept, and then give the time in small group practice and individually. Along with that, when we are talking about um, how lesson planning, we need to understand that the learner is going to progress also. So we need to keep in mind that progression part also, that we need to keep progressing them. So that is also a key component for improving the learners. And when we are talking about how to handle the small groups, the strategy which we still trying and we are learning, how to use the small, we call this concept small teacher, which is a leader students. From the same classroom, you can identify some learner whom you can groom them, whom you can work with them in advance of your lesson, and give them some understanding how we are going to learn in the classroom, and they can help you in your teaching. And this idea was helpful in our classroom. It is little uh, not very practical in terms of teachers, because teachers often resistance because they don't want to spend extra time, but it works. We have talked many teachers, and it works in that scenario if they are using the leader concept very well. uh, I hope I answered your question.
Great.
Even.
Thanks so much, Vikas. Thank you for that answer. And Nicholas, I hope that was useful. We're going to move on now. We're running a little bit behind time, but I'm hopeful that we can catch up. Thank you once again, Vikas, for your presentation. Our next speaker for today is Aisha Omar Adamu. Welcome, Aisha. Aisha is the state team lead for Kaduna State in Nigeria at Teaching at the Right Level Africa. So as state team lead, she provides technical and managerial direction for TaRL implementation in Kaduna State. She oversees the implementation of TaRL activities by working closely with government stakeholders, including the SUBEB, State Ministry of Education, and of course with the TaRL Africa team and other partners. So very excited to have Aisha talking to us today about the check for understanding. That is again another sort of experiment that we have been trying to strengthen TaRL implementation here in Nigeria. So over to you, Aisha.
Thank you very much, Viviani. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll just go straight to it. So thank you for joining us once again. I'll be taking us through an innovation that we have carried out in Kaduna known as Check for Understanding, which is an innovation that was aimed at helping teachers to use children's learning outcomes in the classroom. We'll basically be looking at what the challenge was. Why did we even decide to conduct Check for Understanding? What was our proposed solution to the challenge? And what did we learn while implementing study? And then I'll summarize generally what we have gone through the process over a period of 14 weeks, and then what's next for us in TaRL Africa. So basically, I'll just give around a highlight of what our theory of change is when it comes
Sorry, Aisha, sorry, just a second. We can't hear you. Can you hear us? Oops. Aisha, can you confirm if you can, in chat, can you confirm if you can hear us? Oh, I think, yeah. Aisha, your video's off. So can you just confirm in chat if you can hear us? Okay, sorry, we'll wait for a minute for Aisha to come back. Okay, sorry about that. No webinar is complete without network challenges or technical glitches. So let's just wait for a minute for Aisha to rejoin so she can get started. Just a minute. I hope everyone can hear me though. So we're just
Yes.
great. We're just waiting for Aisha to come back. So that was Aisha from Kaduna State in Nigeria, where she is the state team lead for the work that Teaching at the Right Level Africa is doing in Kaduna State, working closely with governments. And Aisha was talking to us about Check for Understanding, which is again another innovation or experiment that we have been trying to improve the quality of implementation and outcomes for teaching at the right level. And I see Aisha has joined us. Aisha, good to have you back. Could we check?
Yeah,
Perfect.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah,
The network is poor because of rains in Kaduna today.
no worries, Aisha. We can hear you now. Will you be able to share your screen, or would you like somebody
Yes,
to share it with?
I'll go ahead and share.
Okay, great. Okay, carry on, Aisha. Sorry, we lost you already on slide 2, so you might want to just start. Yeah.
Okay. So I was saying that during the course of my presentation, I'll share what the challenges have been while implementing TaRL in Kaduna for over 2 years. What was our proposed solution? And during our course of implementing this solution over 14 weeks, what did we learn? I'll summarize our findings, and then I'll share what is next for TaRL Africa regarding for understanding. So basically, like I was saying earlier on, that TaRL works with the assumption. There are 3 assumptions that we have made and have proved to be effective in the classroom. And these assumptions are that teachers typically assess learners at different points of the implementation, baseline, midline, and endline, and that they use these assessment results to group learners in the classroom. We also know that teachers should provide technical level appropriate instructions for the different learning levels in their classroom. And when you target these instructions, we believe that it should improve learning outcomes. However, over the course of implementation, we've seen that some of our assumptions are going quite well. Some need a bit more strengthening, and some need a lot of strengthening. So things that are going well in the classroom is that teachers understand that when they conduct assessment at baseline and midline, they should use that data to group learners in their classroom. However, the challenge lies that in between different formal assessment periods, children will progress because they learn things fast. Since TaRL is a very quick and remedial program, children will learn fast, and they may have progressed before the next assessment cycle. And so teachers need to group them even as they proceed before the next assessment cycle. We also know that teachers also have an idea of what it means to have targeted instructions, but as they implement TaRL, we find teachers are struggling with transiting from one concept to another. So while they have a good general overview of what they should implement in the classroom, but they struggle transiting different concepts in the classroom. And we see that a lot of children, we have good outcomes that children are actually engaged in the classroom, but that also needs to be strengthened. And so as we're implementing TaRL, we notice that, yes, the main challenge with classroom implementation is that teachers tailoring lessons to learners becomes more complex with time. When teachers have assessment data, they are unable to, in between the different assessment periods, to develop session plans that actually cater to the needs of their classroom, because children would have progressed from one level to the other before a formal assessment. So that was where the challenge lied in the classroom. Therefore, we decided that we should come up with a process that would help teachers to effectively implement TaRL and address the different learning levels in their classroom, even outside of the formal assessment period. Our idea was to develop a process and tools that will support the teachers, that will just nudge them to, there are different principles in TaRL, which we assume that all of us on this call understand what TaRL is, the different principles. And one of our key principles is that children should be grouped according to their learning levels, and teachers should have targeted instructions for learners with their peculiar learning levels. So our process was just to help them, to nudge them and amplify these effective TaRL principles. Therefore, we came up with the Check for Understanding activity. Basically speaking, Check for Understanding is just like activities that children conduct in the classroom to check if they have understood or they have acquired the competencies required for them to move to the next competency level. And when we decided to go ahead and test this check for understanding, if it would help teachers nudge them to keep progressing learners and to keep conducting targeted instructions in the classroom, we did it in a small sample in Kaduna South Local Government of Kaduna State, where we had 10 schools participating. 5 of the schools are the treatment schools where we administered the check for understanding study, and then 5 were comparison to just check if there's a difference with what is happening in the treatment schools and what is happening in the comparison schools. And we had about 100 teachers participate in this, 100 staff. 62 of them were from the treatment schools, including the head teachers and mentors, while 55 were just teachers. So we actually trained them again, like a refresher training on the TaRL methodology. Then we, in the treatment schools, we had 4 of them conducting the homogeneous setting where only the learners with the same learning competencies were found in one class, while one was implementing the heterogeneous classroom setting. However, in the comparison school, all the schools conducted the heterogeneous setting. And during the course of implementation of Check for Understanding, which took about 14 weeks, that is 1 school term, we had 5 activities that, 5 Check for Understanding activities. And a lot of the classrooms were also being observed while there was implementation by either the TaRL personnel or the mentors at the government level. So there were 28 different classroom observations for treatment schools and 3 classroom observations for the comparison schools. So as they decided to move ahead with Check for Understanding, we also wanted to learn a lot during that period. One of the things we wanted to learn was, what is the most effective and feasible design for Check for Understanding, especially in our context? We know that TaRL is quite a very flexible methodology, which takes into account the context and we contextualize a lot of things. So we wanted to see what was most effective in our own context and what is feasible. We also wanted to learn what are the enablers and inhibitors for teachers, so that they can conduct Check for Understanding and also use data, as we learned that they were not really using data as they should between assessment cycles. So we wanted to learn what would nudge them and what was stopping them from using data and also conducting these frequent checks. We also wanted to see if we conduct Check for Understanding periodically, will this eventually lead to improved learning outcomes for the learners? So as we started implementation, we had to come up with 2 different materials. One was the CFU materials, that's the Check for Understanding manual, which we developed to guide teachers. In the Check for Understanding manual, we had different sections. We described what a Check for Understanding process looked like, what they should do during Check for Understanding, how often should they conduct this Check for Understanding. We also highlighted to teachers the different activities they could use for different learning levels. So what are the activities that you can use to check if a child actually has gained certain competencies? We highlighted those activities for both literacy and numeracy classes. We also provided a guide for teachers on how to implement a homogeneous class and how to implement a heterogeneous class. How do you progress learners in both homogeneous and heterogeneous setting? And how do you integrate them? Because to progress learners is one thing, to also integrate them efficiently to move on with their next, to acquire their next competence is another skill also we tried to teach the teachers. And basically we taught them how to also design a session plan, an effective session plan, putting into consideration their different learning levels in their classrooms. Then we designed a data collection tool where teachers will input their number of learners that have progressed. This information was meant to guide them in developing or designing their session plan. The head teacher also had his own recording sheet where overall, at the end of the Check for Understanding period, the head teacher will also collate it and have up-to-date records on the number of learners that have progressed and the different learners in different learning groups in his school. So the cycle actually, the cycle that we implemented that was over a 14 weeks period, like I said, had basically like 6 different components in them. First of all, we implemented the classroom implementation, provided instructions to learners, and there was contact hours for 7 days. 7 days is actually 2 weeks, but because in Kaduna we have a peculiar school attendance period of just 4 days in a week. So children go to school Mondays to Thursdays. So we decided that children will go to school and get instructions for 7 days, Mondays to Thursdays for the first week, and then Mondays to Wednesday for the next second week, because we implemented this check for understanding in a 2-week period. So it was a bi-weekly activity. So on the 4th day of the second week, the check for understanding activity will take place, and there will be no classroom instructions or teaching for that day. It will basically be a day to check if learners have understood all they've learned over the 2 weeks period. During the check for understanding activity, the teacher will also, as he's assessing or as she is assessing, she's also collating the number of learners that have progressed in his or her class. And then the teacher will submit that document to the head teacher, who will now compile the total number of the school summary sheets, highlighting how many learners in the whole school. The teacher will also use this assessment recording sheets to regroup learners and also develop a new session plan that speaks to the data that the teacher has now acquired from this activity. And then the teacher starts another cycle of implementation, another phase of implementation. After 2 weeks, the same cycle goes on and on for 14 weeks. As we conducted the study, we also, like I said earlier, wanted to know what are the enablers and what are the barriers. One thing that stood out was that, yes, the manual that we had developed to guide teachers on how to implement a check for understanding activities in the class was very helpful to them. As you can see on the graph at the right, about 70% of the teachers said they found it helpful and they actually adopted it and used it appropriately. We also learned that materials materials are being used. However, that is the manual. We need to restructure it and we need to format it, because some of the teachers complained of the fonts being a bit small. So we need to, we're going forward, we'll format it and change the flow of it. We also learned that teachers who are quite vast on the TaRL methodology, because check for understanding is just an activity that feeds into the TaRL classroom. It's not a different activity. So the vast and the more competent a teacher was with the different activities in TaRL and what TaRL really means and what our principles are, the easier it was for the teacher to conduct check for understanding activities. One thing again that stood out that is that mentoring support actually helps teachers. Teachers actually do need mentoring support to understand what check for understanding means and also to know how to use data effectively in the classroom. However, there were 2 barriers that stood out for us. One is that there was low attendance of pupils, especially for the day that we had chosen to conduct our check for understanding, which is Thursday, because Thursday is the last school day for the week in Kaduna. So children, there was low attendance on Thursdays. So going forward, we think that we may need to change the day that we conducted our check for understanding activities. Another thing again that stood out is that insufficient teaching learning materials was a barrier to effective classroom implementation, thus affected effective teaching for the teachers. We also wanted to learn, we wanted to see if teachers are trained on how to use data, would it improve their review meetings? And yes, to our delight, teachers actually leveraged on data to have rich and very deep conversations during their review meetings. For example, we can see on the slide, on the picture at the graph at the right, we can see that children, the learners were progressing at an average of 12% learners being progressed bi-weekly. So after each 2 weeks, we have about an average of 12% of the learners in the school progressing. And this is quite different from what we see hitherto the check for understanding activity, because typically we see like 25 percentage points improvement at the end of a cycle. And if this momentum is sustained, we'll definitely have higher numbers of percentage points improvement at the end of an implementation cycle. We also saw that teachers were very, very delighted and were happy and proud to go to review meetings because they had data to show the outcome of their hard work. You know, they were showing that in my class, we had certain number of learners progress, and that was a big boost to them. And teachers that were struggling to progress learners also developed peer mentoring kind of group where they were saying, you know, teachers that had more learners progress in their class were tutoring their fellow teachers on how the strategies they had used to ensure that learners were progressing at the rates we're seeing of 12%. We also saw that head teachers became very assertive about their pupils' performance. Before, when we, typically when we go for classroom observation and we ask how's TaRL class going, there was a bit of there was no assertion from the head teacher of how TaRL class was going. Well, due to the data that the head teacher now has, the head teacher is able to talk confidently about the implementation in his school and say that we have achieved this number of percentage of children have moved from this level to this level. So it gave the head teacher a good boost for, you know, monitoring. Regarding the design and operational feasibility, like I said, wanted to see what kind of model would be best suited for Kaduna State. One thing that we learned is that the bi-weekly time frame, you know, that we allocated to conduct this check for understanding activities, though the teachers felt bi-weekly was quite a good time frame. However, because of the large class size in Kaduna State with an average PTR of like 1 to 80 or 1 to 100, the teachers felt exhausted and spent a lot of time conducting these activities. In some cases, because TaRL has to be implemented, we have 2 hours of implementation per day. Sometimes the check for understanding activities actually spills over 2 hours, and teachers were left to, you know, conduct these activities even during other subjects. So going forward is something that we would look at due to our high PTR. Probably bi-weekly is not a nice suggestion or nice idea, or we need to do something different so that it's not overwhelming for teachers considering the class size. Also, something again that I'll just summarize what we have learned is that yes, formal assessments are good and they give teachers a clear understanding during the formal assessment period. However, teachers would need more than the formal assessment data to effectively implement a TaRL class, because during implementation, the learners' engagement and how they are able to progress on an individual basis between assessment period is something that should inform session planning, and activities and targeted instructions should depend on what is obtainable in the class as at that time and not as at the last assessment period. We also acknowledge the fact that there is complexity for teachers in Kaduna to tailor instruction to the learners, individual learners' ability due to the high PTR in the classroom. However, teachers that have been interviewed, because we've done some qualitative studies, and they have agreed that yes, having a dedicated time to conduct check for understanding activities is very crucial for effective implementation. They also acknowledge that monitoring and mentoring support to them by either the TaRL team or government mentors is key in their morale and in building their capacity. We know that from the check for understanding activities we have implemented, that quickly checking what children can have achieved, the learning abilities they've achieved, it prompts children to, you know, to teachers to regroup learners, and also it improves classroom engagement and improves the quality of targeted instruction that the teacher would deliver in the classroom. Thus, there's potentials for improvement in learning outcomes. We've not concluded on our assessment data analysis, but we are hopeful, and it has shown preliminary findings have shown us that check for understanding indeed improved learning outcomes when we compare it to the cluster that was not implementing the check for understanding. So there's potential in improving learning outcomes when check for understanding activities are carried out in the classroom. What's next for us? We have 2 main things that we're looking forward to doing. We're looking at how we can scale it up with, you know, putting into account all we have learned over the period of the timing. Do we need to change the activities that we are using for check for understanding? Do we need to make it quicker? Do we need to make it a monthly activity? These are things that we want to incorporate as we scale the innovation. Then we also, because it was done in English in Kaduna and numeracy, would also want to try out the check for understanding in another African language that is beyond English. So these are things that TaRL Africa team is looking forward to, and we hope to scale it up with more impacts. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Aisha. Very interesting to see for me as well the progress we made on Check for Understanding. I don't see any direct questions for Aisha in the Q&A box for now. But if you do have questions for Aisha, do put them in the Q&A box and Aisha will respond in writing. Thank you for those of you who have been adding questions to the Q&A box already. We're trying to answer them. We are running behind time, so I'm going to rush through now quickly, thanking Aisha, moving to our next and last segment for today. I'd like to invite Fred Abongu, who is a Senior Content and Training Manager at TaRL Africa. He's based in Kenya, and he's been supporting country and partner teams on TaRL programming across the various different contexts in which we are working. And today, Fred will be making a presentation first on innovations on materials and classroom management, followed by bringing in some voices from Uganda on what some of their experiences have been. So over to you, Fred. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deviani. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Fred Abungu is my name. Allow me to share my screen. Thank you so much. So I will start us off by looking at some very interesting graphics here that have come from different contexts across countries that we work. Some of the very interesting innovations that we have seen from our teachers are ranging from development of TLM using the available walls in the school to developing letter and alphabet flashcards using locally available materials. And one other exciting, which to me looked like a bit complex to work on locally, but somebody managed to work on it from Uganda, is the development of the calendar chart that facilitates the L2F2 process that Amira talked about at the beginning of our discussion. And so why do teachers spend so much time to develop this? These are going to be some of the things that we are going to be reflecting on as we continue with our discussion. You will realize that one of the principles of the effective delivery of teaching at the right level methodology is the belief and the evidence that learning begins from or progresses from development of conceptual knowledge and then moves on to procedural fluency. And therefore, and secondly, that learners, even as young as they are, regardless of their abilities after the assessment, that they have the ability to be able to explore, collaborate, and independently learn when given some light support from the teachers. And so in this session, we are going to be sharing some insights on how teachers or teaching learning materials and enabling learners to learn in small groups could contribute to effective classroom management. But then why is this very important? Why is classroom management a very critical thing? We all know that learning happens in class, and therefore creating a safe space that benefits both students and teachers in a structured and supportive and focused learning environment is something that is very critical and that would then be able to facilitate effective learning. Let's go deeper into learning something about the teaching and learning materials. TLMs play a crucial role in the classroom by enhancing learning environment and making concepts more accessible, engaging for students, for it supports one concrete learning, making sure that concepts can easily be visualized. Learners can be able to use illustrations to grasp abstract information. It also provides opportunity for multiple learning styles. Learners can be able to have fun and engaging activities using locally available materials, and they also create opportunities for differentiated instructions, ease of targeting learners at different learning abilities. But because we all know that use of materials enhances knowledge retention and creates opportunity for learners to learn by exploration and discovery, and creates an opportunity for collaborative learning. However, one of the things that we have observed across the different contexts is that sometimes producing these materials can be very costly. And we've had and seen some programs that have completely failed to take off for lack of enough or available resources to produce materials they need. And therefore, this is a session that's going to be very critical for those of us that are working in different places or in different contexts that could be facing similar challenges, and how we can be able to address some of these things as we move forward. The next very important piece that we also want to look at is about learning in small groups. While there are so many benefits to allow learners to learn in small groups, sometimes this process has to be very strategic and objective for us to be able to achieve these particular gains. Some of these gains could include learners just having a space that promotes active learning, enhancing communication, problem solving, critical thinking, encouraging peer learning, building social and collaborative skills, and also opportunity for teachers to provide support to some of the groups that may require additional support, and therefore creating more room for differentiated instruction. And therefore, it is very important for us to remember that just allowing learners to sit in small groups may not necessarily translate to learning in those small groups. And that's why it is very important that we have to be very strategic and very objective as to how we create and support groups to function. We have seen in many countries where teachers are faced with high teacher-pupil ratio, and small groups have come in handy in terms of supporting them to manage their classrooms. And so without going deeper into a lot of these discussions, this afternoon or this evening, we are joined with a special team of guests that I'm proud to introduce to us this evening. Teachers that have been implementing teaching at the right level methodology across different contexts in Kenya and in Uganda, who I would like to bring on board to share some of their own experiences about what they have been able to do about teaching learning materials and supporting learners to learn in small groups. And join me now in welcoming one, Teacher Joyce Kisoso from Kenya, and Sister Juliet from Uganda. And finally, Mr. Sarapio Hule from Uganda. Could you please just introduce yourself before we proceed?
Okay, thank you, friend. Thank you, everyone on the call. My name is Joyce Kisoso, TaRL facilitator from Kenya, currently based in Kitui County, Isangwa Primary School. Thank you.
Thank you, Teacher Joyce. Sister Juliet.
Thank you, everyone on the call. And particularly, thank you, Fred, for introducing me. I am Sister Juliet Kabua, an instructor at Kasanga Primary School, Kasese District, Uganda.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Kule.
Thank you, Fred, for inviting me. I want to thank everybody here. I am by names of Kule Sarapio Vosi, an instructor of TaRL and teaching at Rodbaria Primary School in Kasese District in Uganda. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us this evening and willing to share your experience with us. Mr. Kule, I'm going to start with you. We've talked about the importance of teaching learning materials in class. Could you share with us how have the teaching learning materials helped you in Uganda in the classroom management?
Teaching learning materials are very important in the teaching process because they help both the teacher and the learner. And they help the teacher to teach effectively, and at the same time, the content is well understood by the learners. They have helped me in a way that my learners are interested in the session that I carry out. They are interested in a way that when the materials are there, they encourage these learners to participate. Therefore, it also promotes active participation of the learners. Therefore, the materials have helped me to be encouraged with the learners, to share more with the learners, and also to use the materials within the environment. We utilize the materials in the environment because they are cheaper. They don't incur a lot of cost with these materials because we get with them within the environment. These materials have also helped me to help the children share with others because our children make these materials themselves. Me as a teacher, I guide them. I also direct them what to do when we are making the materials. An example, we use up boxes, we cut them. After cutting them, we write there some letters and numbers. So these materials help me to be closer to my children. These materials also help me to go hand in hand with the objective of the session, because the learners will have to achieve the objective of the session when the materials are real and they have used them. At the same time, these materials have helped me in the way of sharing. Learners share with each other as they use these materials. These materials also have helped me to bring closer to my learners, come closer to me, because when we are in a process of making them, we share with them a lot, and at the same time, they also take the information home, because when they learn at home, they even continue going to practice with other children at home, and learning becomes real. For now, I can stop here and say they are very useful in teaching and learning process. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Let me bring on board Sister Juliet. Maybe as you also add to what Mr. Kule has been able to share with us, could you take us through how this process of improvising and using locally available materials look like?
Thank you, Fred, for giving me an opportunity to share my experience and the process of making the teaching learning materials. And before I continue with it, allow me add something to what my fellow Serapio has just shared with us. And the teaching learning materials, I say, they have helped me to handle learners with their different abilities and learning needs. Especially, we find that we have learners who get interested in learning through visuals, others on hands-on activities, and others through reading. So through this, all their needs are catered for through the use of learning materials. Then I will also talk about the issue of handling bigger numbers. It is always a challenge when a class is bigger, but when I use these materials, they help me to attract the attention of learners. They keep focus so they don't get distracted as they wait, or they all focus on the materials that are before them. Also, I'll say the learning is becoming easier because the materials help even the abstract concepts to be easier through the materials they play with. They find that they even explore themselves some of the concepts. For example, like in my school, learners no longer wait for the time when they are to go to TaRL. Even in their free time, they ask to go to the classroom, explore materials, practice activities on their own. So that's what I wanted to add on what my fellow Serapio has shared. Now getting back to my point on the process of making these learning materials, from my personal experience, when I started implementing TaRL, when we had finished assessment, I was given a group that I was to handle, literacy and then in numeracy. So those two particular groups are the ones that I prepared for through the session plan. And during the preparation of the session plan, I looked for the activities that were suitable for each group and the level. So after looking at those activities, I also looked at the learning objectives of each activity. I explored the environment and looked at the readily available materials. I selected the materials that were relevant for those particular activities. Then started collecting materials. I engaged learners and then engaged some of my fellow instructors. Then after, I sorted those materials. My fellow had already mentioned, I don't want to repeat, but like the boxes, the sacks, sticks, the bottle tops, and the empty bottles, and so forth. I sorted and then saw those that I would use. After collecting those materials, I looked for guidance from the teachers who handle our classes because I felt that I needed more support in preparing those materials. So the teachers trained me on how to design different materials. And after I engaged also my fellow instructors at my school. After that, we started creating the materials and we even engaged learners also in making materials like chopping of the boxes in order to get those cards where we got word cards, letter cards, and so forth. The learners also helped us also in designing those very materials. And after that, I looked for somewhere to store them, good storage, so that they keep safe for the learners. Then after, we started using them in our classes for learning. And as I've already said in my explanation, that learners do not wait for time for TaRL. Anytime they get, they go and explore those materials as they learn on their own.
Thank you so much, Sister Juliet. Back to you, Serapio, before I move to Joyce. How do you ensure that the materials you're creating are sufficient and suitable for your class?
I make sure these materials are adequate and appropriate to my class in the way that I look at the curriculum that we are handling, look at the activities that we are handling in the session, and the material that I use must go hand in hand with the activity that I'm going to handle. For example, I used when I was teaching multiplication, I had multiplication by ladder. I used the local materials from banana cuttings, banana materials to make a ladder. So it was really liked by the learners and it had no harm. So we have to look for materials, or I use the materials that would not harm children, that would not be harmful. These materials are adequate in the way that they could be enough for the learners, depending on the number of the learners. So the number of materials versus the number of learners that we have in the class. We have to ensure that all learners handle the materials because they also learn how to handle them effectively. Then of course, I had talked that they are got within the environment. So accessibility is very important. How do we access these materials? So they should be adequate in the way that they are easily available. We can access them within our local environment. Then they are adequate in a way that they help learners to develop some skills, because learners make them in different shapes, the way they are guided, and the way that even learners bring some ideas on how to handle these materials and how the shape should look like. So they were also inadequate in the way that they are free. They are freely got. Then also, we look at the assessment and the evaluation. When we are assessing the learners, we identify some materials to use because these materials help us to know, help us to how to handle the content. For example, when you are teaching at the introduction part of it in the session, you can use the material. When you're introducing the session, you can use the material to evaluate the session, how it has gone and how it has been performed by the learners. So we ensure that we look for materials that are relevant to the cultural relevancy. So they are adequate in a way that when we get them, they are not far from the norms of the culture and how they are handled by children and the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Sarapio. In the interest of time, allow me to bring on board Joyce Kisoso. Joyce Kisoso, we talked about effective setting up and functioning of small groups and why that is important. Could you share with us your experience briefly on how that has been useful to your class?
I can say these small groups gives a teacher time to attend to the lower level learners, as some of the teachers' duties are carried out by the group leaders, who then act as junior teachers in the class. I can also say in the small groups, learners tend to understand faster through discussions and also peer learning. In these small groups, in case you have got large numbers, most of the instructions are given to the group leaders, who then redistribute these instructions to the other learners. Then, when it comes to distribution of teaching learning materials, you find it easy and it also saves time when distributing teaching learning materials. Finally, I can say through these small groups, each learner gets an opportunity to participate in an activity.
Thank you so much. That was so brief and straight to the point. Something that I wanted to just follow up that would be very interesting for you to share with us. Could you take us briefly through the process of setting up these small groups? And we have also had cases whereby transitioning from whole class to small groups has wasted a lot of learning time. And what is this that probably you may have done to make sure that that transitioning is smooth and fast?
Okay. These small groups are made mostly after an assessment. So after I assess these learners, I usually group these learners according to their learning needs. Then after that, I read out the names of the learners in their respective groups. Then I allow these learners to select their group leader and also the group name. Then after that, I keep on monitoring the performance of the learners, day in, day out. Then after I realize there is progression, I reorganize the group members and also reshuffle group leaders in order to ensure there is maximum participation and also acquisition of leadership skills in each learner. When it comes to smooth transition, when it comes to transition from whole class to small groups, I usually write the name of groups in the manila paper and stick them where the groups meet to ensure each group member knows where to meet. Then periodically, I usually change group leaders to ensure there is maximum participation of learners and also which will also help them acquire leadership skills. Also during transition, I also include a song. So from whole class, as we transit to small groups, we have to sing a song in order to make the learners active. Finally, during TaRL class, we usually sit in a C shape. So during transition, when I have a large number of learners, we usually fold together to ensure that there is no cross movement in the class.
Thank you so much, Joyce, Sister Juliet, and Mr. Kule, for sharing with us your experiences. We completely appreciate the kind of work that you're doing, and we look forward again to having you on board to share with us these insightful experiences you've had to support a learning improvement on the continent. Thank you so much, and over to you, Deviani.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Sister Juliet, Joyce, Teacher Sarapio. It was really interesting to hear your insights. We have unfortunately run out of time, so we won't be able to do more live Q&A today, but there are some questions in the chat for Teacher Sarapio, for I think Joyce. So if you could please try to answer those in writing, that would be greatly appreciated. I want to say thank you very much to everybody for joining us today. As you're leaving us today, please do take part in the last Menti that we have. I had shared the Menti details earlier. You can go to menti.com and enter the code 548964443 that you see on the screen. We'd love to hear your feedback as you leave the webinar today. I've also put in the chat a link that you can click to put your feedback. Thank you once again for joining us. Please do give us your feedback before you leave today. The first question is, what is your main takeaway from today's webinar? Please do let us know in the Menti. And then we have a question or two more that we'd like you to answer as you're leaving. Thank you very much. We will have another webinar coming up soon. And we will share those details with you on email. We'll also be sharing a recording of today's webinar for all of you who were able to attend, but for those who signed up and weren't able to attend as well. Thank you once again for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the session, and we look forward to seeing you back on the next webinar. But as you're leaving, please do tell us what is your main takeaway from today's webinar. You can go to menti.com and put in the code 548964443 or click the link that I have just put in the chat and access the Menti. Thank you once again. The importance of instructional material, making TLM with learners, yes, effectiveness of localized TLM, effective classroom management. Fantastic. Great to see that everyone's resonating from the practical experiences that we heard from today. It'd be great to hear reflections. Please feel free to continue adding your responses as you're leaving the webinar today. Thanks once again. My name is Devyani. I'm the Technical Advisor at TaRL Africa, and I look forward to seeing you at our next webinar. Thank you once again to all of our speakers for making time to be with us today. And of course, a big, big thank you to all of you who made time on a Wednesday afternoon or evening to attend this session. So we're seeing some interesting responses here in the Menti on what is your main takeaway from today's webinar: targeting progression activities, regularly checking for understanding. These are some of the things that are not just relevant to teaching at the right level programs, but obviously relevant more broadly to the work that all of you are doing in the classrooms, whether or not it is teaching at the right level. So thank you so much for sharing your insights, your feedback. I see there's still a question in the chat for Teacher Sarapio, in the Q&A box, sorry, if you're able to answer it, from Nicholas, that would be great. Tanvi, would you like to go to the next question? And people can still continue to answer this previous question. So what did you all think about the topics that were discussed in the webinar? Did you find them useful to the work that you're doing? Yes or no? Do you feel these are addressing some of the needs in your context? Yes or no? Please respond to the question so that we have a better idea of whether we're bringing the right topics as we try to build a community of sharing and learning. Thank you very much. Feel free to say no if you thought it was not relevant. It's always good to know what is relevant for our partners and our audience. So great to see that 10 of you think it was relevant. Thank you very much to all of you who made time to attend today. Great. Thank you once again, everybody. We'll wrap up for now, and we hope to see you at the next webinar. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to the speakers, and thank you to the attendees. Bye-bye.